here it is cataclysmic events, but they are kind of, like the end of the Ice Age. But the other thing that happened during the Mahabharata war was the use of these terrible weapons. And if we think of the Brahmastra as a nuclear weapon, then it is obvious that you see in many of these very big fights, when two heroes are fighting each other, these heavy weapons have been used. These heavy astras have been used. So there's going to be an impact on life and civilization also. There's going to be an impact on nature also.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the WAC Indian History Podcast. I'm Utkarsh.
Namaskar, Sumedha. As always, Utkarsh's partner in this podcast. And today we're going to take you on a very interesting flying journey. Right, Utkarsh?
In more ways than one. Let's just say that. No, but today's topic is indeed fascinating. And it's one, I think it was on my mind for a very long time, but I think we finally come to it now. Because we are delving into very interesting, but also potentially very controversial territory in a way.
Yes.
And it's also a territory, this is a field which is broad. And on one side of this field, you have fantastic claims without proof. And on the other side, you have something with proof.
So Utkarsh, nutcase theories on one side of the spectrum.
Yes.
And on the other side, we can have some textual study and informed speculation and informed comparisons. But I must make it absolutely clear at the outset that I don't want to make any more claims than what I can prove with evidence. And the rest of it, like I said, is going to be informed speculation.
Exactly. So what we will be exploring or trying to understand today is ancient Indian technology, or specifically ancient Indian machines. There is, depending on what you listen to and who you listen to, you have all sorts of claims to ancient Indians were super duper advanced, nuclear weapons being thrown about all over the place. I'm just putting it out there. Or you can take the hard science view today that civilization in India started in 1500 BC. Before that, there was nothing, whatever the exact date might be.
I thought it was 1857. I thought it was after Queen Victoria became the Queen of England Queen of India, that civilization started in India.
Yeah, I think
you're being too generous. You're being too generous.
Okay, but the point is, what do we know? What do we know based on current evidence? The other thing, if you look at this beyond just India, right? I don't know if you're aware of, in the Western world, in the biggest podcast and even on Netflix, there is a person called Graham Hancock. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I have read a few of his books.
Yeah, I mean, he has this entire thing going that there was ancient civilization was very advanced, then there was a cataclysm, and then we had to restart. So there's that. So and depending on who you talk to. Yeah.
Utkarsh, what about Eric von Däniken, who said that aliens came from outer space to colonize us and gave us all our technology? So the ancient
is that what's it called?
Chariots of the Gods.
Chariots of the Gods.
Chariots of the Gods. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So today, where do we begin with all of this?
No, I think today more than ever, Utkarsh, let's keep to the hot questions format.
Yes. Absolutely.
We went wandering around a little last time, and we had promised ourselves that we would be more disciplined this time. Absolutely. We have also got questions from our audience, from the people who listen to our podcast. So we must deal with those questions also. You had some questions along with the audience. Yeah. So I think we've made a list of those questions. I think you have them.
Yes.
I think you have
so
the questions.
What I think is
we'll
start slow. And then we'll pick up the pace, not in terms of the speed of us talking, but in terms of the contentiousness of what we're talking about. Okay, so let's start with something uncontentious. It's a term that all of us know. It's also the name of one of the best restaurants, Indian restaurants here in Singapore. So my question to you is, yantra. What is a yantra?
Yes.
Is it, there are many definitions. Honestly, I don't know the answer. It could be like a machine. Is it linked to a practice? Is it a protocol? So what exactly is a yantra? If you could give me a good understanding, then at least I know what
Yes.
I'm talking about next time.
It seems crazy to me that there's a restaurant which is named after machines, the machine, but okay. I hope the food is good. So, yantra is a Sanskrit word, and the root is yam, which means to control.
So it's yantra,
So the
not
idea is-
yantra. Okay, it's yantra.
No,
Okay,
it's
got it.
yantra. Yes, it's
Okay.
yantra, and it comes from yam, which means to control. So the idea is all to control. Now, here I must really emphasize that in a lot of common understanding or popular understanding, yantra is connected to tantric Hinduism. Tantric
Okay.
Hinduism is a different stream of, or one of the streams of Hinduism, which has very many esoteric practices which are different from what you and I normally understand. But over here, a yantra is a chart with very, very detailed, strict specifications, and that chart has spiritual powers. It can be.
So when you say it's a
you know,
chart, what do you mean? Is chart means what? Is it a amount? Is it a set of information? Is it directive?
No,
Is
no,
it
no, 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 no. It's a sketch. It's a drawing
It's a drawing.
of
Oh.
of certain specifications, and it is normally delineated either on a flat piece, or it can also be slightly two-dimensional with reliefs.
Is it a
So a
technical drawing?
yantra, you can call it that because it is geometric. Normally, it is geometric in nature.
So it's like a
normally.
technical drawing. Okay.
Yes. So, and it is very, very strict. All the specifications are strict because it has a lot of spiritual power. And a lot of tantric practices are focused on these yantras on which you can meditate or through which you can get spiritual powers.
So
But
could
this
I
is
use
not
as a-
the yantra.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying this is not the yantra we'll discuss today. We can discuss tantra and yantra some other time. I hope
Okay.
we will. It's a very interesting topic. But not today. This is not the yantra, and many people, especially those who live in the West, when they listen to yantra, this is what they will understand. So I want
see.
to make it very clear that this is not it.
So, because from what you're describing, yantra seems to be operating in the realm of your spiritual consciousness versus the physical realm, right? Is what you are
Yes. Yes.
right.
Yes.
So that's a
But
whole
all-
different. What we are talking about
Yes.
today is about physical machines, right? So that's why-
Contrivances, things that
Yeah.
are made
Yeah.
by human hands.
Okay.
However, this idea of yantra, which you are referring to quite nicely as a technical drawing, is also actually connected to the idea, much older idea of yantra or a contrivance which you can control to provide certain results. This
Okay.
is what this tantric yantra also does. So it is taken from that old idea of yantra, which means something that you have made, which you can control, and which will provide you with the desired results. So
Got
that
it.
is
So the yantra
yantra.
can give you an outcome in the physical world as well, despite having a basis in.
No, the other way around. The original basis is something made by human hands in the material sphere.
Okay.
Later, it got translated into something which can
I
be
see.
used in the spiritual space. It's the other way around.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's based on that.
Okay, helpful. Okay, so then I got better. So I think we will discuss yantra when we do cover it in more detail. It's not an ancient Indian machine that falls under the purview of the conversation today. Very helpful.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about an ancient Indian machine, or perhaps I should use the word weapon, that should fall under the purview. So you know this as well as I do, that one of my favorite things to watch when growing up was Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana. Right?
Yes.
That was like,
Yes, the little you and your brother. I mean, you were mesmerized by.
some people
by
watch
that,
Cartoon
yes.
Network, I just watch Ramayana for whatever reason.
Yes.
Right,
But
and-
can I interrupt you here,
Yes,
Utkarsh?
yes. Yes.
I know you are really anxious to jump to the Ramayana weapons and astras. Fair
Yeah.
enough. But can we do a bit of a background here? As
Okay,
you know,
sure.
different kinds of yantras which were there, and
Okay.
then move on to weapons, and then move on to the flying machines.
I'm easy. Let's go any flow. But get to the weapons
Okay.
eventually.
Yes. Okay, maybe I'll just, scoot through this and
Yeah.
reach the weapons very fast. No, what I wanted to say is that yantra or contrivances made by human hands to certain specifications have been part of this civilization since the time of the chariots. Remember, the chariot is also a war machine. The
Okay.
Rath is also a war machine. And the Rathkar was a very, very respected person in society. And if you remember our podcast where we dealt with Sanoli, remember we saw how the specifications were, the axle, the wheel, the body, the development of the technology of the chariots, which we saw the differences between Egyptian chariots and Indian chariots and how they developed. The ones with, 2 horses, the ones with 4 horses. So the Rath is one of the first very important yantras of Indic civilization. And
so then the Rath is a yantra.
The Rath is a yantra, yes, yes, indeed it is. That's why I wanted to give this, kind of background. What are the other kind of yantras? So there's one very big Indian festival which we've completely forgotten about now. We don't celebrate it anymore. It's called the Indradhwaj. It used to also be held during autumn, where we have Dashera and Diwali now. And it was devoted to Indra and Indrani. That is the goddess Indra and his wife Shachi or Indrani. It was celebrated by raising up a huge flagpole. That flagpole was, there were lots of things which depended from that flagpole. And it was a very complicated contrivance and very high. So there was a very complicated system of pulleys and ropes, etc. to raise this up. And this itself was seen as a yantra. This was, this was kind of a flag yantra. It is called a yantra dhwaj. And it was, this yantra dhwaj was raised every time this Indradhwaj Makha, which is the festival, which was done once a year. So this was yet another very important mechanical contrivance. Other than this, we have things like, you have a yantra which is a water pulley, which is called a ghati yantra, which is to take out water from the well. Or you have a tail yantra, which is to squeeze out oil from different kinds of seeds. Or an ikshu yantra, which is to get cane juice. So this is just to say that the types of machines which were used were legion, and they were for all kinds of very small things to all kinds of very big things. Now, of course, we don't want to go into such mundane things. I doubt if people are very interested in water pulleys and oil mills. That's not, we're not going to bore them with this. Although I would love to, I am very fascinated with water pulleys, and I want to do a podcast on water technology. However,
well, one common refrain that you hear in Western history is that the Roman Empire knew how to make aqueducts, and then the Middle Ages they forgot about it, and then they wondered how men could make such contraptions. So I would love to understand how do the water pulleys compare with these aqueducts, etc.
Yes, and water technology. We have
of course.
a great. We have a great dependence on water technology because of agriculture and irrigation. But Utkarsh, back to the topic.
Yes.
So yantras are also important because a lot of fortifications, we are going to come to weapons later, but let me just talk about fortifications, depended on these. And there were lots of contrivances to trap the enemies. For example, Kautilya mentions a Bhumi Graha. What is that? It's a underground chamber, and there is a mechanical staircase. You let down the mechanical staircase, people go down, and then you pull it up again. So then it's sealed off. So these kind of things which were used by the royal families and for either trapping prisoners or for saving yourself were huge, and they are mentioned. The Arthashastra is full of yantras.
Okay.
And in the story of Chandragupta, there are many other yantras. One of our listeners has asked me about the temple Garbhagriha and the Ardha Mandap. I will of course speak about it at the end. But I want to say that the earliest example we have of a yantra in a temple is one which was used to kill an enemy. So when an enemy went to the temple for darshan and you wanted to kill him, you had an overhead yantra, and then that would release a stone on that poor person's head and the person would be crushed to death. So this was called a yantra toran. And there are, this is mentioned in Kautilya, and there are also, this story is elaborated in Mudra Rakshas, which is a 5th century play of Vishak Dutt on the same topic. So many yantras were used to kill your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
This was one big weapons, fortifications, and killing your enemies, taking your enemy unawares. So something like they're sleeping on a bed, but the bed is actually a mechanical contrivance, and it will tip over at night, making that person fall into a pit with spikes, and that person is dead.
Wow.
So these were all these were all yantras for killing, and these are very old descriptions. These are descriptions of modern times. These stories which I am telling you. So these things are, I want to just say in this background that yantras were there from the most mundane to the most important and transcendent things that you did. They were there in temples, they were there in fortifications, they were there in weapons, everything. Without yantras, civilization was impossible. So we'll today look at just those few questions that we have, but this is a topic which we can fruitfully discuss many times.
Okay, makes sense.
So if we are to come to the two things that we are very focused on, the flying machines and the weapons, which one do you want to take first?
Let's go with the flying machines. Because we have let's put it this way, right? We have a very clear history of aviation. We have the beautiful sketches of Leonardo da Vinci in the 1500s or whenever. Then you have the fight that the Wright brothers had with another person. I'm forgetting the name. I remember reading it or watching something. But so what is the Indian narrative / what proof do we have? Because there's a lot said about ancient flying machines. It's described as well, right? Pushpaka Vimana and all that. So what do we know beyond the dirty word that we call mythology, which is of course itihas, but what do we actually know to some level of certainty?
Utkarsh, I am proud of you for mentioning the word itihas. So
I'm
this podcast this podcast is changing you too. I am so glad to hear it. But yes, Viman, so flying machines. Human beings have wanted to fly, I think, forever.
Since they saw a bird.
Since they saw a bird. A dinosauric bird. I don't know, whatever. Pterodactyl, perhaps. But anyway. So, in our own literature, there is a lot about flying machines. Viman. A Viman is a flying machine. So, there's a lot about it in any scripture, anything that you want to talk about in Itihas and in Puran. There's a lot of flying happening. Because all Devi Devtas have their own Vimans and they fly in them. For example, in the Devi Bhagvat, the interesting story of the Devi, Shakti, who calls Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh to her and says, you think that you are the creator and the destroyer and the maintainer of life in this cosmos. Come, I will show you something. So she makes them sit in her Viman, flying Viman, and they fly all across the cosmos. It's not the solar system. They fly across the cosmos. And she shows them many solar systems with many Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, which she has created. So you see, in this Viman, there is not, this is cosmic flying. It is more than even interstellar flying. And she shows them how she has created so many different, solar systems, so many different earths, so that Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh should not feel too pleased with themselves that they are the ones who sustain all life on earth and cosmos and Riti and everything. So this is one story from the Puran which I really like. So I always quote it when I have to quote anything about women or anything about Vimans. Although, to be very fair, no one has ever asked me to quote it in the context of Viman before. The first time. Always quoted in the context of women as creators. So this is as far as flying machines are concerned. However, we also have people who fly. So that's a different thing from machines. Not precisely the topic that we want to cover today, but just for the record, flying in the history of Indic thought or itihas or stories is also people who fly. So many Devi Devtas have this ability to fly, but it can be different. For example, Hanumanji. Hanumanji can almost be said to fly, but he was not flying, he was jumping. But his jump was so huge, it was like flying. So when he was a child, he saw the sun and he wanted to eat it, so he jumped at it. Then remember when he went to rescue Sita ji, then he jumped across to Sri Lanka. That's also kind of flying. Then there were these beings called Vidyadhars. These were magical beings who had the ability to fly. And they occur in many of our Purans. They also occur in this very big bunch of stories I've mentioned before. The Badkaha, the Brihat Katha. It's a 6th century BCE roughly. So that means about 2,000-3,000 years ago. It's a whole bunch of stories. It's a story complex. One of the oldest ones, comparable with the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. You have many flying beings in this. But if we want to talk just about Viman, and if we want to talk about how are they represented in stories and how are we to believe that they actually existed? So
I think for me there are two parts to this. One is how do we know they existed? What can we tell? But secondly, are there, like you said, right, there are very specific yantras for how to create this thing to put the stone on the person's head or how to create that bed. Is there any such specific technical drawing, whatever you want to call it, description, specification of a Viman? For me, that for me is more interesting than citing why
stories.
We think yeah, I mean, this is interesting,
stories, but the stories are very cute.
Okay, let's go with this.
I have to tell you at least one or two.
Please do.
So, and these stories are from the Brihat Katha. So that is the Badkaha was rewritten many times in the next 1,000 years. So we have Tamil, Marathi, Sanskrit, different versions. So I will be telling you stories from many of these different versions.
Yes.
So it's a story cycle about a king and queen of Kaushambi. So his name was Udayan and her name was Vasvadatta. Now, Udayan is what can I say? He is the lover boy of ancient India. He was, what is it called? Somebody who's really attractive to women. I'm forgetting the term for it. But anyway, be that as it may, I hope
Casanova.
Well, yeah, maybe.
No, you asked me the term. It's a Western term.
Yeah. So he was courageous, handsome, romantic, and famous all across the length and breadth of the country. And there are numerous story cycles about him. Today's young girls know nothing about him, and they have different people to have a crush over and sigh over. But ancient Indian teenage girls were sighing over Udayan. So this is the story of Udayan and how he married his first wife Vasvadatta. There are other wives, there are many other Sanskrit plays, etc, etc. But anyway, so they got married. Then Vasvadatta was pregnant. There is a concept which is called Dohad. Dohad is the desire of a pregnant woman for something, anything, whatever it may be. And it is the sacred bounden duty of her husband to get that for her.
Whatever she wants.
Whatever she wants. So many of our stories in the past begin like this. That this or the other pregnant woman asked her husband for something impossible. And then he went and did it and got that for him. So what did our heroine Vasvadatta want? Obviously, to fly in a flying machine. She wanted to fly in a Viman. And she wanted basically an aerial view of Earth. She wanted to see everything that was happening on Earth from the sky. So he called all his carpenters and all his artisans, and they said, sorry, this is not something we can do. This is not even in the classification of machines. Nothing called a flying machine. But he had a very able and intelligent minister who was called Rumavan. He gave a whole series of stories saying that flying machines exist. The way to make them is known, but it is kept secret by most artisans because it is not a skill that they want other people to know about. So there are stories, the frame story concept, there are stories within stories. So Rimavan told him a story about a father-son duo where they both knew how to fly, and there is the story of two brothers, which I will tell you when we talk about AI, because that story is flying machines plus AI. So that story I will tell you later.
Okay.
So then they did not give up and they found an artisan who built that flying machine for Vasavadatta, and she ascended that flying machine and she had her Doha, the desire was fulfilled of watching the earth from the sky. So, these are the kind of stories. And there is another very interesting story about a very skilled person, skilled artisan, who wanted his daughter to marry yet another very skilled artisan. So, he said it about that I want someone very skilled. So, he got an offer from one young man, and that offer was kind of saying that I know how to make flying machines. And I will be able to make these flying machines and show you how smart I am. So one day he comes home and he finds his entire house in a tizzy, because someone has come and he has got some rice with him, and he says, please cook the rice for me, and they are not able to cook the rice. So he understood at once that it is his future son-in-law who has come and done something. So it turned out that that rice was made of little shavelings of a particular kind of wood, which looked and smelled like rice, but it was not possible to cook it. And that was his son-in-law, who had also come there in a flying machine. So then he gets married to his daughter and has many adventures. But what is the end of the story? The end of the story is that when the king asks him to give up the secret of the flying machine, he doesn't. He just wakes up his wife in the middle of the night and they fly off. They escape because they do not want to give up the secret of the flying machine. So this is a story, Utkarsh, but I want to extract something very important from it, a very important conclusion. Why is it that how to build a Viman, if at all this knowledge existed, why is it that we don't know it so easily? So one can say that if it was there in ancient India, it should be available to us now.
Yeah.
It is not available to us, one, because of all the depredations and violence and looting and loss of knowledge. That is one. And two, the fact is that even during that time, as we see from these stories, etc., this was not knowledge to be bandied about and thrown about, and like on the internet you can see how to make an atom bomb. These were not those days. So this knowledge was very secret and it was very much guarded. And this I will also tell you with reference to something else, because you had asked me another question. One was the stories, but you said you are more interested in specifications.
Yes.
About how to make all these. So there is something which is a kind of 11th 12th century manual. So it's called the Samarangan Sutradhar. It was written by Raja Bhoj. Now Raja Bhoj of Dhar is he is somebody who was a king, who was also an intellectual of the first order. There is nothing on which he has not written. He has written on aesthetics, he has written on grammar, he has created many poems and many prose creations. But he was also a person who built, there are still temples in Madhya Pradesh built by him, and the biggest temple, the temple with the biggest shivling, also built by Raja Bhoj. And there's a little technical drawing of that temple on a rock outside. So this is just as far as Raja Bhoj is concerned. So he wrote this Samarangan Sutradhar. So when he has considered many topics, this topic of how to make a flying machine is considered in that. So there is a description of how to make it, what materials to use, and what fuel to use. All this is there in that portion of the Samarangan Sutradhar. But what he says over there is that I am not giving you the full information, because it should not be available in the public domain. One thing which I have not mentioned but which you would remember is that we are also an oral civilization. And a lot of the expertise of the carpenter or the artisan or the technician or the scientist was conveyed orally. So there is this manual which has, for example, it tells you what to use, what materials to use. So these are the common materials: tin, copper, silver, etc. These cloth, this is what is going to be used to make that machine. what kind of fuel will you use? So he says that the fuel which should be used is mercury. Very, very interestingly, as we'll see right at the end, the person who did in 1895 apparently send up an aircraft, he used mercury as a fuel in India. Yes, in 1895.
Okay.
So,
okay. I'll reserve any judgment till I hear more. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So this is, as far, there is one very famous thing called Vaimanic Shastra, but I have it's not an authentic document which you can date to the ancient past. You can't do that. It is something which has been written later. But some of the other, this, for example, this description at least 1,000-1,200 years ago, when flying machines were just science fiction, of how to make them, is something which makes me feel that all the descriptions and stories which we have in the Itihas, in the Puran, is not merely a figment of the imagination. But I must say that using these specifications, no such aircraft has been made as yet.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something which can be done, but it'll cost a lot of money and take a lot of effort. I don't know whether it's really possible to do that. However, a technical manual for making a flying machine was there in ancient India. That much we can say with certainty.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
No, so I have a few thoughts. So first is, I think I can understand the rationale in terms of how the information was conveyed, and of course it's not just the language, right? You have to have a technical understanding to understand it. And there could
Utkarsh, you've said such an important thing which I did not mention, but this is another very, very big problem, because we don't know how to understand those words today. And the same thing will crop up when we talk about weapons.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the details of weapons and the Arthashastra, it's so difficult to understand. What does it mean?
Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing which I found very interesting is you said that this information of how to fly is not meant to be broadly propagated. So there is the modern capitalistic approach where we figured out how to make an aircraft, let's do commercial aviation, let's use it in defense, let's use it everywhere. On the other hand, here you're saying we have technology, but we don't want to use it broadly. It's such a big difference in intent.
It's a huge difference. But Utkarsh, this is...
Yeah.
Isn't this connected with the same thing we've discussed before? The idea of Abrahamic civilizations and Christian civilizations, that we are here to exploit nature and to make it bend to our will and to use it so that we get the most out of it. That extractive attitude is not there in Indic philosophy.
Okay.
It's not there at all. And in fact, even when weapons are made, or when any such something which disrupts the environment is done or made, then the consequences are thought of very seriously. And the last story which I will tell you when we talk about Brahmastra, it will bring it out very well.
Okay, that makes sense. So is there any resource that anybody who's interested, who's maybe perhaps listening to this conversation, sparked off their interest? What can they refer to for more?
They will have to read the Samarangan Sutradhar of Raja Bose.
Okay, so they have to
Fortunately,
get a Sanskrit course first, learn Sanskrit.
No, that's what I always say. But this time I'll tell you that it is available in English.
Okay.
So you can try and read it in English. For whatever it's worth, you can try and read it in English.
Okay. Got it. So I think there are 2 or 3 tangents or other linked things, right? So maybe you can decide how to go.
But Utkarsh, how can you forget your Pushpaka Vimana?
I was going
This is right here where it belongs.
Yes.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is where
go
it
ahead.
belongs.
Go ahead.
So, okay. Now, Pushpaka Vimana was a flying machine which was owned by Kuber. So, Kuber is the god of wealth. And he obviously he has the most desired things, So, the Teslas or whatever it is. What cars are most desired, Utkarsh, today?
Okay, I dislike Tesla, for the record.
Okay, but what cars are most desired today?
Yeah, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bugatti.
Okay,
Bugatti.
Okay. So this is the Bugatti of the ancient world, perhaps. I don't know what to say. It's much more than a Bugatti, of course. So the Pushpaka Vimana is mentioned in the Ramayana many times in different contexts. So, it's also used to torture Sita, because Ravan makes her sit in that Pushpak Viman and creates an illusion that Ram and Lakshman are dead and makes her see it, the battlefield from the top. So it's used in all those negative ways also, because of course it is the property of Ravan. But when they have won, when Sri Ram has won and they are going back to Ayodhya, then obviously he wants to go back very fast. He says to Vibhishan, who is then now the king of Lanka, that I want to go back. Now, this book which I am looking at, so this is the Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, I am looking at the Yuddha Kand of the Valmiki Ramayana, and it's in one of the last few sargs of the Yuddha Kand that this is there. So when he wants to go back, then Vibhishan says, of course, now the Pushpak Viman, which was my brother's, which he had stolen from Kuber, it's all for you. Now, what was a Pushpak Viman? It had some very interesting characteristics. Of course, it flew in the air, but it looked like a cloud. And I am, giving
Do we have
you
any pictures, descriptions?
No. Descriptions, of course, this whole thing.
Can we put the description into Soda and get an image into the AI?
Utkarsh, we can try that. Because the description is very detailed. It says Tadidam Mega Sankasham. So that means it looks like a cloud. Then what else is there? Then there's a long description of its decorations, which you and I may not be so interested in, because it was decorated with gold, silver, gems, etc. and tassels and etc. etc. But that means first-rate luxurious decorations. So what else did it have? It had huge, beautiful rooms, many rooms, and a wonderful floor, which was also made of gems. What else? What's important about a flying machine? Its speed. What speed did it have? It had the speed of mind.
Speed of mind?
Speed of mind, indeed. Tad Vimanam Manojavam. It went at the speed of mind. And you could not stop it. It was unstoppable. So what else was important about it? The most important thing I felt was, Sri Ram decided he's going home. So he'll take his wife and he'll take his brother. But no, then he decided that everyone will go. Vibhishan will go. Then all the courtiers of Vibhishan will go. Then all the Vanars and Jamvan and everyone will go. So okay, they all got into it. So you see, it had a huge kind of capacity for all these thousands of people to get on. Then they started flying back, and the aerial view from Rameshwaram, from Sri Lanka back to Ayodhya is described in these sargas in a very, very detailed way. So Sri Ram points out to Sita everything. Look, this is where we fought. Look, this is where they saw Ravan's Chitta. He is lying like a heap of ash.
Are
and he
there
says,
any
this is where we fought in
geographical
Briji.
markers that can be used to correlate with?
Yes, in fact, I will recommend a couple of books, 2-3 books, Utkarsh, which have done good work on this. And the geography which is mentioned in this Valmiki Ramayana is easily recognizable today. Very easily recognizable. Not all of it.
Let me ask the question in a different manner. Is this geography that could not have been described unless it was looked at from an aerial vantage?
Yeah, this is a question, which I have also asked myself. And I have not arrived at a conclusion about this. The jury is out as far as I am concerned. Okay. There is a different play in which there is a description of the distance from Nagpur to the Himalayas. This is called Meghdutam.
Okay.
In that play, this is the cloud messenger. So he is sending a message to his wife, who is an Alkapuri, which is in the Himalayas, and he is describing everything. He's basically describing North India. So in that, Utkarsh, I think your question is answered in a very clear way. There are aerial views. There are views which cannot be described but for having an aerial view or an aerial prospect. In the Ramayana also, perhaps yes, but I read it again yesterday and I was not able to make up my mind very honestly.
Okay.
However, in the narrative itself, they are seeing everything from the top. And, well, anyway, this question is bothering me also. So I've been thinking about it. When I reach an answer, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So then they reach Kishkindha. So Kishkindha is the home of Sugriv, the home of Hanuman. So when they reach Kishkindha, then Sita ji says, it's good to have all the Vanars with us. Why don't we take all their wives and children also? Why don't we take the whole city of Kishkindha?
The whole city.
Yes. Because I love all of them and I want to take all of them to Ayodhya. So very good. Pushpaka Vimana obliged. So more rooms came up.
Is this
and
literally
everyone
how
got
it's
into those rooms. So let's see, how is it literally described? About I think it just says something like everyone. आकाश में उड़ने लगा. Let me see. No, it just says that all of them, they did a parikrama, went around the Viman, and then they climbed onto the Viman and they just flew off.
Okay.
So, what are the things that we are seeing about the Pushpak Viman? Okay, it's like a cloud, it's beautiful, its speed is amazing, speed of thought, and it cannot be stopped, and it is elastic in terms of the number of people it can hold. So, the Pushpak Viman, it leaves all Bugattis in the dust.
It's not conforming to the physics that we know. That's all I can say.
Yes. Yes, it's not. But then, Utkarsh, there may be a physics that you don't know.
Yeah,
so many things, change. So, this is a description of a particular flying machine, which is the mother of all flying machines. In terms of luxury, speed, technical specifications, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So this is the apex of the flying machine, so to speak. All the descriptions that we've had, and there are also some very matter-of-fact descriptions of flying machines. So I told you about this father-son duo who are mentioned in the story of the Badkaha, and there was this. What is the name of the father and the son? I can't find. So there was a father, Mandhata, and a son, Lalitaditya. Both of them used to work very hard. They were both artisans. Then one day, Mandhata and Lalitaditya were very far from each other. And Mandhata suddenly felt, oh my God, maybe my son has not had his lunch. I must rush to see if he's eaten. So he immediately summoned his flying machine, sat on it and went to check if Lalitaditya has had his lunch. So you see, the use was as casual as that. This is a very small thing. But the use of the flying machine is depicted in stories to be absolutely part of the lives of the people who made them. And all these stories, by the way, the Viman is always very closely connected, kept in fact very close to the person who has made it. It is either a royal person or a benefactor who gets to use it. Otherwise, the people who make these Vimans, even in these stories, they never let go of them.
Okay.
So that also points to the secrecy of the whole affair, I think. So this is the wonderful Pushpak Viman. Do you remember it from Ramanand Sagar?
I remember it being smaller, not carrying that many people for sure. I think it had a face of a swan or something. I'll probably find it on YouTube and put it here.
Yes, but it will be very poor compared to the description. Compared to the actual description, it will be a very poor copy.
I mean, but then,
But then what could Ramanand Sagar do? He could not replicate this kind of machine. I don't think
he did replicate all the Brahmastra and all the different ones with the fire and the...
Oh...
That was a
Utkarsh,
whole different thing.
Utkarsh, that was not replication. But anyway, let's go on. Maybe we should go on to weapons now.
Yeah, let's go there. So what are these? I forgot.
Are we done with flying machines? Are we done with flying machines?
I think so. I think it's a good starter. Is there anything else you wanted to mention that you haven't had a chance?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let's go to weapons.
That's okay.
Especially since we have a limited amount of time.
Yeah. So, weapons, again, as you can understand, they are the, what can I say, they are basic to people. People have been fighting since forever. And whether you use swords or you just use stones to throw at people or you use more sophisticated things, weapons have always been there. And there are things called astra and there are things called shastra. So shastra is something that you hold in your hand and use. So like a sword or a gada or a bow and arrow. This is shastra. But astra is different. Astra can be used from a distance. You fling it, you throw it, you propel it by some method. You know what, Utkarsh, I must say this here, although I just forgot to say it when I was speaking about the Samrangan Sutradhar. In the section on machines, there are also remotely controlled machines which are mentioned. Just something which I remembered right now. So, this thing is also applicable to these astras.
Okay.
Because they are controlled remotely. Once they leave you, then you can control them. So, some of them can be, target specific. So, the son of Indra had once tried to molest Sita ji. So, Ramji had thrown an astra after this fellow. And that astra was tied to this fellow. It would not stop till it had hit him. So he ran all across the world and tried to dodge it and whatever and said sorry and everything. But since he had tried to molest Sita ji, his actions were really not to be pardoned. He begged and begged. So in the end, all that happened was that weapon, it took out one of his eyes.
Okay.
But it could not be denied. So you see, this is a weapon which is tied to its target. No matter where the target tries to hide. So, Shastra are of many types, but I think today we are not that interested in Shastra, which is more like, we will discuss it sometime, and they are also interesting in a way. But we are interested in Astra, which we can use from a distance, which can be propelled in some way or which reaches its target in some way. That is the kind of Shastra we are interested in. Not Shastra, sorry, Astra.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Astra are of, there are many classifications, but a classification which is done by Kautilya and also by some others, also agreed to by Raja Bhoj. That is Sthir and Chal, which means Astra which are stationary and those Astra which move. And there are many different descriptions of these given. I am a researcher of the Arthashastra, so I can tell you about many of the moving astra and stationary astra of the Arthashastra. So, you have the Sarvato Bhadra, you have the Jamdagnya, you have a Tal Vrind. So, all these are, some of them throw arrows, some of them throw stones, etc., etc. And as it happens, me and another associate of mine, Ms. Geetali Tare, have done a lot of research on this. And she is an illustrator. She has illustrated some of these machines. So this is completely original work. She discussed this with some of her army friends because her father is in the army. And we have come up with some representations of these which we will show you on the screen over here, of Tal Vrind, of Sarvato Bhadra, etc., etc. You will see some of these and you will see how they worked. Remember, this is our understanding, our research, our visualization. And if anybody who knows physics or weaponry would like to add to these, I am all open to the idea.
Okay.
So these were some Sthir and Chal Astras. But if we want to look at the really exciting things that were done, we do know that the less exciting but still very equally important things were that Ravan's Lanka was defended by a lot of fortifications. Amongst those fortifications were also robots.
Robots.
So, robots, yes. There is a robot who is called a Dardur, who's called Dardur.
While we get into details of this, I just want to ask one overall question, which is very much linked to this. This sounds like very advanced technology. If today we are sitting in 2024 if a Stone Age civilization or the Greek army of Alexander comes to try to attack us, even any small country will destroy that army. So my question to you is, I know you'll get into the details of it. My question to you fundamentally is, if you had such advanced technology at such a long time ago, where did it go and why did the country get conquered? That's a fundamental question. So it's a foundational question, honestly, if you ask me.
Yes, so Utkarsh, we have a cyclical idea of history, Things are created and then they are destroyed. And then they are created again. So we are at the phase where the last phase of creation has been destroyed. At the end of the Mahabharata war, in fact, everything was destroyed. That is how it ends. All of, your advancement, your technology, your people, you were down to the rubble.
Okay.
You were down to almost nothing. And that is something which is, the meaning of Mahabharata, that is the understanding of Mahabharata. It was a change of the yug. We were moving into Kali Yuga, and everything that we had known in the earlier Yuga had to be destroyed, was destroyed, because Kali Yuga will mean the final destruction in this cycle, and then we'll move on to Satyuga again. So this is the philosophical understanding, and the practical understanding can be perhaps, like that of Tilak, that these are through successive ice ages, and your technologies get completely wiped out at the end of the ice age with pralaya. That means when waters flood everything. Utkarsh, in this context, it's interesting to see that underwater civilizations have also been found. Look at the one which has been in the news last month, Dwarka. Dwarka is one of our own very advanced civilizations. So this of destruction and new creation, this is something which is part of Indic thought. I find it very easy to believe.
Okay.
And you know what? I am not the only one. I'm sure you've heard of Oppenheimer, so has more than half the world.
Of course, yeah.
So when Oppenheimer was asked, that was the explosion of the atom bomb during the Manhattan Project, was this the first time? What he said was, this was the first time in the modern world. But in the past, it could have happened before. So remember, Oppenheimer was somebody who studied Hindu Itihas and Itihas very carefully.
Yeah, famously so.
He is the person. Yeah, so he famously quotes the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So he also thought, it seems, his words indicate that he thought the same way. So this again is in the realm of speculation, but it is in the realm of informed speculation.
Okay, so what you're essentially saying is that all the knowledge of the technology was lost, either after the war or through cataclysmic climate events, which is what Mr. Graham Hancock keeps saying, by the way, also.
No, here it is cataclysmic events, but they are kind of, like the end of the ice age. But the other thing that happened during the Mahabharata war was the use of these terrible weapons. And if we think of the Brahmastra as a nuclear weapon, then it is obvious that you see in many of these very big fights, when two heroes are fighting each other, these heavy weapons have been used. These heavy astras have been used. So there's going to be an impact on life and civilization also. There's going to be an impact on nature also. So this is perhaps one of the reasons why we really have no traces of it, and we don't understand it, understand why, where has it disappeared. This could be one reason. Okay.
We can go back to what you were explaining. Just wanted it was a foundational thing that I wanted to
ask. What I was actually, what I was explaining was, or what I wanted to move on to was, you had asked me about the different kind of astras which I used. And you remember, Utkarsh, in Ramanand Sagar, two arrows would come from here and two would come from here, and they would meet each other and
collide,
dissolve into fire.
Yeah.
So this is something which is described in great detail, and if you want to know the types of arrows, are so many types of arrows, and we can also show a picture of some of them. So they are called Narach, Ardhanarach, Bhal, Anjali, Vatsadant, Singadant, Danshtra. All these mean different things. Maybe it's like a Trishul on top, or it is like the teeth of lion on top. And they had different kind of feathers, and they had different kinds of things to help it to move faster, the projectile, that is the arrow. The other thing I just want to mention here, we just saw that attack by Iran on Israel, and we saw the way the Iron Dome worked on those missiles.
Yeah.
Does that remind you of these Ramayana wars, Utkarsh?
Yeah, you
When
have the
two
thing coming in
missiles
the air,
in the-
getting intercepted.
Yeah, yes. So isn't that what the Iron Dome is doing? I was really struck by this. When reading off and seeing, it was actually quite an amazing thing to see. The way the Iron Dome worked was quite an amazing thing to see. So
Yeah.
I was reminded of this kind of thing described in the Ramayana also, of the different arrows which hit each other. One of the most, the most, what can I say, the most number of missiles or most number of astras are mentioned during the time when Indrajit, that is the son of Ravan, is fighting with Lakshman. So when Indrajit is fighting with Lakshman, what are the different astras which are used by both of these people? Let me tell you some of the names. So you have, Yamraj Astra, which is Lakshman's Astra. It is negated by the Kuber Astra. You have a Raudrastra, which is fire. It is negated by the Varun Astra, which is water. So in all this, the elements, fire, water, earth, air, space, all these are very much integrated into these weapons. And this integration is seen in the Samarangan Sutradhar also, when he speaks about how these weapons should be made and what powers should be harnessed. So it is these powers which are harnessed. You have the Surya Astra, you have the Agneya Astra. There are so many, Utkarsh. But let me come to the Brahmastra, because that is the one we are most interested in. So the Brahmastra is supposed to be the infallible weapon. It never fails. And it never fails, and it is so powerful that you cannot use it without actually thinking about it. I mean, should you be using it or should you not be using it? So you should never use it without thinking. This Brahmastra is used in the Ramayana in a very interesting context, which is not during the war with Ravan. And Brahmastra, before I tell you the exact story, maybe it's interesting to discuss about why we think that the Brahmastra could be similar to a nuclear weapon. Because the description of what happens after this Brahmastra is let loose, it does correspond in some way to the things that we read about what will happen when a nuclear weapon is actually unleashed. So there is fire, there is darkness, there is dust, there is electricity in the air, there is a lot of sound. So perhaps it could be the basis of a research paper to look at the exact descriptions in the Ramayana or in the Mahabharata and the exact description of what happens after radiation. As a lay person, I am not a scientist. As a lay person, the similarities really strike me. And also, the effects of radiation. And in the Mahabharata, some of the things that were said to happen after the Yuddha. For example, in the womb, children died. So that means fetuses in the womb died.
That sounds very
This
much
is
like
like,
nuclear fallout.
yeah, like, yes. And then Subhadra was the wife of Abhimanyu. She was pregnant. The fetus in her womb died like all the others, but it was revived. And then it was born, and this child was the one who, Parikshit, who kept the lineage going. So these are the small things which make you think that there was something to do with the power of, the way nuclear power is harnessed for these nuclear weapons. There was some harnessing of this power. This is in the description of the way in which the Brahmastra works. This story of the Brahmastra is a very interesting one, which brings in harnessing of the elemental powers of the universe, the use of this astra, which is subject to certain strict laws which cannot be changed, the environmental effects of the use of this, which have an impact which is earth shaking, in fact, cosmos shaking. So this story is of the time when Sri Ram and his army were at Rameshwaram. They wanted to cross over to Sri Lanka. They want to go there because Sita ji was being kept over there. But the sea was in between. So how to go? So Sri Ram, being the very gentle and sajjan person that he was, he in front of Samudra, he prayed for 3 days. Please help me. Please do something so that me and my army can cross. Samudra was unmoved. Varun Devta, he is the god, he is unmoved. And after 3 years, Sri Ram is very, 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 very angry. And then he says, now he is going to see my anger. People who are
So
very
3 years.
gentle,
He waited for
3
3
days,
years.
sorry. Did I say years? It's days.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's days. Okay. 3 days.
Yeah.
So then he
Hmm.
said, this is it. People who are very gentle and considerate, no one listens to them. So now I am going to show you my anger. So then he stands up and there's something called a dhanush ki tankar. What does it mean? The string of the bow is pulled and left. So it creates a
Okay.
sound.
Hmm.
It creates a sound which is the harbinger of war, which is the harbinger of letting loose of your arrows. So the mere sound of that, it is described as to how all of Dharti, Prithvi, the sea, the animals in the sea, the trees, everything was shaken. And then Lakshman comes and says to him, don't do this. Because it is going to have effects which are uncontrollable. This is going to have an effect on the world and environment which is uncontrollable. Please don't do this. And up in the heavens, all the Devis, Devtas, Rishis also said the same thing. Please don't do this. This is too dangerous. But Sri Ram was very angry.
Yeah.
So then he said, I will do this. The sea is always said to be within its maryada, which means that it does not overflow and cover all of the land. Otherwise, we'd all be dead. So with this tankar, it was overflowing, but he was unmoved. He stood there, and then on his arrow, on that arrow, he put something which is called a Brahmadand. This is a specific weapon. With the Brahmadand, he said he did what is called Abhimantran of Brahmastra. So how did weapons work in the past? There was something which was called a mantra, and the mode which is used is the bow and arrow, and the mantra is the way in which that is activated. So he activated this Brahmadand with the mantra of the activation of the Brahmastra. Now, when after this was done and he stood there like that, the entire cosmos was roiled. And you should just read the description. Even, it says that that Surya and Chandra, along with all the other nakshatra, if you remember your Jyotish, Surya, Chandra, and the other nakshatra means the planets.
Yeah.
The way in which the planets were moving, that became what they call, it's called Tiryak Gati, which means that it became Teda Meda. I don't know how should I say it in English. It became oblique. The paths started crossing each other. And the sea rose up in waves which were as high as the Vindhya Mountains. How high would the Vindhya Mountains be? At least 8 kilometers. So that is how high they rose up. And all the beings within the sea, they all came up. So there's a description of sharks and crocodiles and all kinds of animals. And all the shells, they were all thrown up. So basically, all of the environment was completely, not just the environment on the earth, because what else was there? Like I told you, there was dust, then there was andhakar, then andhakar means darkness, then there was vidyut, which means electricity, there was huge wind, huge sound, and those things are described in great detail. After this, then Varun Devta became, of course, very scared, because what did he say? Once I let this loose, there will be no samudra on earth. All of the water will be dried up by this Brahmastra and this Brahmadand. So samudra will have no existence after this. So obviously now Varun Devta became very worried. And he came up and said, in a very, very apologetic and he was, of course, very afraid also, that I could not let you do what you were asking, because I cannot let people walk through water. What will happen? It will
defy all environmental laws, all earthly laws. I cannot defy the laws of the cosmos. So can you see the kind of concerns which are there around weapons and their use? What was then Sri Ram said, all right, don't do all that. What I will do is finish your existence, and then me and my army, we will walk to Sri Lanka. Your Samudra will be finished. But then, of course, he begs pardon and he says, no, I will do something. And you know what he did? Nal Neel could throw floating stones, so a bridge was made. But then what happens? Sri Ram has already done Shar Sandhan, which means he has raised his arrow with that arrowhead and with the Brahmastra. It has to be released. It cannot be stopped. So then he asks Varun Devta, where should I release it? Now it has to go somewhere. And wherever it goes, it will suck up all the water. So then Varun Devta tells him that to the north of where we are, there is a place called Drumtulya. There is a set of people who live next to the sea and they are very evil. You put it over there, and if you destroy all of them, you will be doing a great thing. So Sri Ram lets loose this arrow and it goes through Drumtulya. In Drumtulya, from a place next to the sea with water, it becomes a desert. That place is today known as the Thar Desert and the Run of Kutch. Those are the places where it is said that Brahmastra landed and there was devastation. However, after that, being the very kindly and compassionate God that he was, he said that this will be a very good desert. There will be this Marusthal, that is what it was. This Marusthal will be a good one. There will be herbs and trees which grow over here, and it will always have a lot of milk and ghee. Utkarsh, isn't it strange to think that this place, which is now Rajasthan and Gujarat, so Gujarat is the home of Amul, from where we get the maximum amount of milk even today. So there's some such interesting, tiny little, I don't know, do we want to call them coincidences or whatever we want to call them? So this makes this whole thing really, really interesting. So what were the points I wanted to bring out? Using of these astras was not done lightly. It was done after discussing the impact. And the impact was not just at the level of people. It was at the level of environment, at the level of Earth, perhaps at the level of the cosmos. If you interfere with the orbits of planets, what kind of impact is that?
Yeah,
so this
that's
is
beyond
what
our nuclear
the
weapons even today. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the kind of impact that a Brahmastra had. And as to whether or not, how can we be certain that these existed? Well, I can offer you no kind of positive proof that you would accept as such. So this is itihas. So it happened. Perhaps at some other point of time, we will find a manuscript which tells us how to build, how to make this Brahmastra. As of yet, I am not aware of anything which tells you how to make it. Like for flying machines, I told you how to make it. For a lot of the Shastra, not the Astra, the Shastra, which were used by people, there are many manuals which will tell you how to make these. For some of the simpler Astra, like the Sarvato Bhadra or the Tal Vrind, etc., yes. And sometimes but these are kind of more mechanical. These are not at the level of technology we are talking about. So for these mechanical things, how to make them, some descriptions exist. But how to harness the energies and the powers of the cosmos, which is what all these Varunastra, Raudrastra, Agneastra, etc. are. Fire, water, air, earth, etc. They are harnessing all this and letting it loose. So this is something that I don't know. If I am not aware of any manual on this.
Okay.
So before we finish, but Utkarsh, we have to look at the two questions that our audience has asked us.
Yes.
One of those questions is, yes?
There's a question on temple construction and sound technology.
Yes. So somebody asked me, and this was on Twitter, he asked me about what is it about the Garbhagriha which makes the sound of everything that happens in a temple, the sound of the rituals. How is it magnified and how is it conveyed? Because obviously we have all been to temples and we've seen what
Yeah.
happens over there. So I found a few technical papers on the internet, and I'll keep the links here. According
Hmm.
to them, the Garbhagriha is made in such a way, one, it is made of stones, and two, it is made in such a way that the size of the deity is very specific, along with, which is connected with the size of the Garbhagriha itself. There are no windows, there's only one door. The whole surfaces are all reflective and highly reverberative. Because of the stones and because of the way the construction is done, sound is amplified in particular ways. Just outside the Garbhagriha is something which is called the Ardha Mandap. The Ardha Mandap is half the size of the Garbhagriha. In the Garbhagriha, you can have only one Pandit or priest who's doing the puja, one or two. In the Ardha Mandap, there are few other people. Then outside is the Sabha Mandap, where everyone, all the devotees stand. The sizes of all these are connected to each other. What do these sizes, the materials, and the reflective surfaces do? They reflect, they amplify the sound of what? The sound of bells, the sound of
Hmm.
chanting, the sound of conch shells. And the frequency of these, not only is it amplified, each of the frequencies is separated and you can hear them separately. So it makes for a kind of, what can I say, a choral setup, or something like an orchestral setup, where you
Hmm.
can hear a whole combination of things together. Since sound is very, very important in the Hindu system, and in fact, there's a whole system of philosophy, Mimamsa, which is based only on sound, mantra, and ritual. This was given a great deal of importance. So it's a very good question, and one day we must do a podcast on the construction of the temple. So here, the Garbhagriha, the Ardha Mandap, the surfaces, the way in which they reverberate, and the way in which the sound is amplified, and also the frequency is separated. This gives us the impression that we have, the sound that we can hear, which is to help in reaching the divine. So I hope this answer is satisfactory. And we had another question. Do you have it in front of you?
Let me take a look. Construction AI
Yes, yes,
in
that
the
was the
past.
question. So, this question about AI in the past. So, the kind of AI we are thinking of now, suppose you have AI which is based on machine learning and
Hmm.
data.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Hmm.
we did not have computers in the past. So, machine learning, I cannot say that there was any machine learning. But
Hmm.
if we define AI as something which simulates human intelligence, then we
Okay.
have stories, so many stories of robotic constructions which stimulate human intelligence. This story, which I was telling you about, the Brihat Katha, that I would tell you
Hmm.
later. So, in
Hmm.
this story, there are two brothers. These
Hmm.
brothers know how to make flying machines. So, they are living in a particular kingdom. So, first, they make small flying machines made like swans. These swans go into the treasury of the king and bring back some gemstones, etc., and they become very rich. But very soon they are found out, and obviously the king wants to prosecute them. So,
Hmm.
what do they have? Both these brothers. These brothers have one flying machine each. When they have a flying machine each, the capacity of both these flying machines is different. The elder brother is Pranadhar, and the younger brother is Rajyadhar. Pranadhar has a flying machine which goes 800 yojans, and he sits in it quickly. They have to run away, and he puts all his family inside, and then the Viman is full. There's no space for the younger brother. And then he takes off and he goes 800 yojans. Now, Pranadhar is stuck. What to do? So, what he has a flying machine which is not as good, it can go 200 yojans. So he
Hmm.
sits in that and he goes 200 yojans and then another 200. So he goes 400 yojans. And then he goes there and he finds a city which is absolutely empty. It's a deserted city. So what does he do? He peoples it with robots. So he makes artificial people and an entire city out of them. So if you can, and they do everything that, people do. And since we are this is from the story of the Badkaha, the son of Udayan, Narvahan Datta. Narvahan Datta comes upon Rajyadhar in his perambulations and he asks him what is all this. So he says, see, this is what I did. And so I have made all these artificial human beings to give me some company because I didn't have anyone. I was completely alone. My brother left me. So it thought of in a kind of, very loose kind of way. We can say that there were robots who simulated the intelligence of people. The same thing is there in yet another story in the same story complex, which is the Badkaha, where one character is given a doll which can do anything that you want. A human being can do anything that you want a human being to do. It can also do magical things. So here we are skating on the thin ice also of fantasy and science fiction, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we are just to look at simulation of human intelligence, yes, figures are made and they are imbued with the same power in a way that humans have, but they are not given mind and consciousness. They don't have mind and consciousness. They are run by the person who has created them. In this case, it is Rajyadhar. So artificial intelligence in terms of computer, artificial learning and data, no, I don't think so. But in this other extended sense, yes.
Okay. I think it's very interesting to hear these descriptions. Okay, so what is the source of this one, this robot story?
This robot story is from the Badkaha, which is a 6th century BCE Paishachi Prakrit work, which is now lost, but it has been replicated in many different languages, including Sanskrit, Tamil, Marathi, etc. So this story is from the Katha Sarit Sagar in Sanskrit, written in the 10th century.
Okay, and we know that these are factual stories, not fantasy stories. Well, factual is a difficult word.
Yeah, but I can't say yes to that, Utkarsh.
I mean, you could read Harry Potter, the future archaeologists could read Harry Potter and say, okay, they had witches and just asking.
Yeah. So, well, maybe you did have witches. Today, I don't know, but maybe you did have witches. How do you know you didn't? But I agree.
That's a different
thing. Here we are skating into the area of science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah. Okay.
But all these are connected in any case. What is today's science fiction becomes tomorrow's AI.
Yeah, tomorrow's reality. A lot of precedents there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think there's so much more to cover. We have deliberately tried to, just skirt the basics. But I think each of these topics can be explored much further in depth.
Yes, and people, when you listen to this one, just bring in your ideas and bring in your questions. So I will, when you ask a question, it triggers something in my mind and then I go back to that source and reread it. So I've been having an amazing time rereading a lot of this stuff and going through all of it. And there's a lot of technical stuff, and there are these small little things which really make you think that this must be real. This capability thing, Utkarsh, that I just mentioned, that the elder brother filled up his Viman and went off and the younger brother was left. So in the Samarangan Sutradhar, when we are talking about making these flying Vimans, then it is very important, it is said, to first set down how much capacity that Viman has. So somehow these stories and the technical stuff, they strike the same chord. So it gives me a sense of perhaps such things being there. And of course, you know that we had this gentleman called, what was his name? He was a Marathi fellow, Talpade, I think, who made a flying machine in 1895. His name was Shivkar Talpade. He made a flying machine called the Marut Sakha, which was made out of bamboo cylinder. And he used, like I told you, he used mercury as a fuel. and that mercury apparently it releases hydrogen, and which is lighter than air, so the thing rose into the air. This was done in the presence of, it is said, His Highness Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, and there are some reports of it in contemporary newspapers. But it seems to have been wiped out of history. I don't know why. Before
Okay,
the
I think
Wright
we need to
brothers,
explore.
remember?
Yeah, just a few years. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll have to cut it short because I think the dog need to go. They're already barking behind.
All right. Yes, I think we've done it all, Utkarsh.
Yeah,
We've done
yeah.
all the questions we had, and we have addressed the audience questions also. So I'm fully satisfied.
Wonderful. Great. So again, feel free to ask further questions. We will again do the same format of seeking your questions for the next topic
Yes, we
prior
will.
to the next video.
Yes, we'll do that.
Yeah.
So see you next time then. Till
All
then,
right. Take care.
enjoy the Pushpak Viman.
In your brain at the speed of mind.
Yes.
Take care.
Namaste. Take care.